Hello, CD listeners. Do you remember that introduction, by the way? If you're my age, probably very much do remember that. That's Tom Petty. Tom Petty is in the studio today, folks. Well, I used to dream about playing drums for Tom Petty all the time. How the hell are you, hustlers? This is Doc Kane coming at you from Kobe, Japan with the podcast, Marketers Who Can't Market. Today is May 23rd, 2021, and I want to talk with you today about I think it's kind of a neat little idea. Maybe it's something you already do. The idea being that there are a lot of benefits in doing just one more of that thing we have to do than we really want to do. If you do any kind of exercise, particularly if you lift weights, you know the benefits of doing just kind of like one more rep, right? Sometimes one more set. A rep is like the number of times in a grouping of lifts. The number of times in a grouping of lifts. A rep, basically, this is the way it works, right? If you're doing, let's say, a bench press. If you're not familiar with weightlifting, you're doing it, and some people aren't. Like many years ago, I had a boss who started lifting weights, and he was in his late 40s, I think, if not 50s. And he had no idea what sets and reps were. I was kind of surprised. And so I had to tell him. And so this is the way it works. So if you are doing, let's say, a bench press, you do, and you lift the weight 10 times in a row, and then you stop. That's called a set. And most people do 3, let's say. The average lifter is doing 3 sets. So you put the bar up and down 10 times, and then you stop. That's 1 set. You do it again 10 more times. That's your second set. And 10 more times after that, your third set. Each time you lift the weight in one of those sets is called a rep. All right? A repetition, basically, is what that stands for. And so if you are familiar with weightlifting, then you know what I'm getting at, right? So one more rep gives you the advantage of muscle growth, essentially, tearing down more muscle fibers so that you can experience the growth that comes from that, and the pain and the agony that also comes from that. But it's passing, right? Unless you end up with DOMS, which, again, weightlifters will know what I'm talking about. DOMS is what we call delayed onset muscle soreness, which means you lift today and you feel okay today afterwards, and maybe even tomorrow you feel okay, but the next day, you can't walk, especially on a leg day, right? Leg days. But anyway, there's tremendous benefit in doing a little bit more than we think we're capable of doing, right? And today, my wife and I were running, and I just really wasn't feeling it, and I just kind of had business on the mind, which is very typical of me, especially as of late. And, running what I know is going to be a 10K run early in the morning. And I hadn't eaten anything today before I left, which usually I try to do. I'm cutting down on my potatoes because potatoes are making me fat. Oh, I lost my microphone there. And I was hungry, and I was thinking about business, and I was ready to let her know on several occasions, like, baby, I think I'm gonna have to take an earlier train home today than the one I normally take home. But I held in there. And coincidentally, I held in there. I was getting ready to give up, right? I was like I said, I was tired and I wanted to be done with it. And then we came across a woman who was walking. She has this kyphosis thing that I talked about a couple days ago. The idea of perseverance and persistence. If you hadn't listened to that podcast, you might want to check it out. And here we are running down the street, and I'm tired, and we both see this woman who's, leaning over because she can't stand up straight and walk. And my wife says to me, oh, another one, perseverance, right? Now, how in God's name am I going to tell my wife, I can't really run the normal 10K after seeing this woman, and my wife points it out? Impossible, right? And so I went through and I finished my run, and these days, because winter is so long, winter's not so long, but winter's cold here, and we don't really run as much in the winter time, and I start to kind of lose my conditioning. And so now I'm only up to 10K, and when it gets warmer, I end up running about 20K. And so on the way back, I take the train. But I was glad that on the way back when I only run 10K, I take the train like I did today. But I was glad I pushed myself, and there will be benefits to this, obviously, that I'll gain. The same is true with work, right? And what I found, and I actually was thinking about doing this particular topic. I had written it down in my notebook maybe 2 week. Oh, I guess the first day I ran these. The first day I did a podcast, I wrote down notes as to other things I could be talking about. And this was one of the things. Benefits of doing just one more than you need, or one more than you think you can. One more than you need is almost maybe even more appropriate, because at work we tend to kind of think, okay, I'm done. I did the thing that was on my list, or I did the thing that I was prepared to do, and then we'll stop, right? But I realized a couple days into the podcast, I had some extra time, and I did 2 in one day. And it's a very common thing to do in radio, and I used to work in radio back in the day when we were not pre-recording shows and things of that nature. But these days, and for the last 15 plus years, pre-recording your intros and your outros and your breaks and all that sort of thing is all done ahead of time. So you are probably listening to a radio station that you think is live, and you call in, and there's nobody picking up because nobody's there. Because all of that stuff is recorded ahead of time. So they're stacking the projects so that they can pay. So the owner of the station, which is usually some sort of conglomerate these days, only wants to be able to pay people for certain chunks of time, right? And if you can chunk your time appropriately, you end up with a more productive output as well. If you're a chef, I've been a baker before, and I've worked in kitchens a number of years. I always want you to cut things in a certain way, prepare things in a certain way, do your batching. The same is true with computer networking, which is another thing I've done, right? Batch files, batch your process, line things up, do things as close to one another as you can if you have a similar task, right? So if you're writing, you write, and then you file, or you write, you stack things up, and then you file, meaning putting them in a filing cabinet, right? So chunk things. It's a very common way of doing things smartly. We did it at Amazon as well. But a lot of times when we're done with that process, we want to stop, right? So this idea I have is that if you do a little bit more, just like you do with weightlifting, then you build in 2 really important things into your process. One is you build security in the sense that if something happens, like you want to take a day off, or something happens and you're not able to get behind the microphone, like today, I went to turn on my computer and it didn't want to work. And so, I'm thinking like, I'm on a roll here. Today is podcast day 11, and I'm not going to be able to record the podcast. It was quite disappointing. But if I had done 2 yesterday or the day before, then I wouldn't have to worry about it as much. But I was worried about it, and that's not a good feeling. So that's one example. You do a little bit more than you need to, and you prepared Boy Scout style for something that might go wrong, right? And also, as I mentioned, you can take a day off if you want, right? If it's just like, I don't want to do anything tomorrow because I did it yesterday, you have the liberty of doing that. The other thing, the second thing, which is really important if you're thinking about trying to scale your business over time, is that by doing things regularly, and if you do things every day, you're going to get good at it, and you're going to know the process, right? But you never kind of get out of the process. And if you chunk things, if you do like 2 recordings a day, or 4 or 5, then you get to a place where you've really learned the steps. And then you're in a position to offload that task, to delegate that task to someone else, right? So, for example, with the podcast, right? So this might seem, it's like writing, when people read something, they believe that it took a similar amount of time in a way to write the thing, but they're vastly different, right? You listen to this podcast, maybe it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and you think, okay, that's basically a half hour's worth of work. There's a lot more involved in this, right? So I need to record it. I need to, once I record it, see how I can't like rattle these things off the top of my head? It's because I haven't done enough of them, and I haven't done enough of them in a row. And this is what I'm talking about, right? So first thing I have to do is I have to record it. Then I have to kind of check that the file sounds decent as I'm creating the cards for the episodes. So the visual that you see, all that layout work that I do in Canva takes time, right? I have to add, the audio is already added because I created that file once, but I have to create a new card and download it from Canva. Then I need to upload it back into Canva as a different file and attach it or append it to the then larger file, which will be my entire recording, and then kind of make a single unit. Then I've got to do this conversion thing in Zamzar. Maybe I do that beforehand. I'm not sure. I've got to convert the file. Then I've got to download it again. Then I have to upload it into YouTube. I have to wait for that. Then I have to create the description for YouTube. I have to do all the bullshit settings in YouTube that I have to do. And it takes a while. So sometimes these things, especially depending on how long they are, like when I did the book review podcast a couple days ago, that was 40 minutes. And I had to listen to that quite diligently on the playback to be able to make note of the books that I mentioned and then find the affiliate links for those books and all that jazz too. So I think that whole thing altogether took close to 2 hours, right? So you can figure on like double the time for the effort. But if you chunk them, then you can really kind of get on fire, right? So in an ideal world, all I do is sit down and I talk. And then I save the file, and then I give the process to someone else. So I say, okay, this is the title of the podcast. Make sure, and I've already saved the file name, so they have a file name, and then make the card with this particular title, and it's all standardized, so the layout is basically the same. And then do the other process, right? And all you have to do for that is once you really know the process of uploading a podcast, let's say, and getting it on YouTube, you record it, right? So you do a video recording and you send it to your assistant or whomever is helping you out with it with instructions as well as a video recording, and boom. And then all I have to do is literally spend the 20 minutes that it takes to record the file, right? So by doing things in chunks like this, there's a tremendous amount of advantage and benefits that we don't see initially. We see it as painful, right? It's exactly like lifting weights. You really do not want to do another pull-up, another push-up, another set, another rep. It hurts, literally, and it's not fun. But because you do that, you can go further next time. Because I decided to keep running today, I'll be able to run further next time. And because I ran on an empty stomach today, I'll be mentally able to do that more easily next time, right? I also didn't have coffee, which is another thing that I usually have in the morning every day and throughout the day, even before I run. And I did not have that again today, or I didn't have it today. So I was kind of like out of my normal game, but this sort of like tension, this sort of not having what it is that you're accustomed to, like 3 or 4 potatoes every morning, is a good thing. So consider this. I would encourage you to push yourself. What is it that you're doing now that you only kind of do one of a day? See how many more you can get out of yourself. When I used to write content articles in the medical industry, I used to do usually I could get away with doing, I should say, 1 a day. But if I did 2 a day, I always get really ahead of the process, and I could take a day off, like I said, right? So stacking is important. There's all sorts of different ways to call this stacking, chunking. We talk about putting numbers together. That's called chunking usually. Batching is something we talk about when we're talking about in the kitchen industry or in the computer industry. So if you want to learn more about this and learn how to get really good at it, because some of it's not common sense, honestly, um, then use some of these words as you search around. Like, just as an aside, chunking, for example. So you may not be familiar with this phrase chunking as it relates to numbers. I learned it when I worked at Target, which has the friggin' best training program I've ever been in as far as customer service goes. But they taught us about this idea of chunking because in different places of the world, they refer to number sets in different ways, right? So in the U.S., we're usually talking in sets of threes, right? So if you have a telephone number, it's 555, 555, 5555, right? 4 at the end. In Japan and all sorts of other places, it's totally weird and backwards. And so they they're using 4 and 4 or 2 and then 3 and then 4. It's crazy. And the reason they taught us this at Target is because you have people working at Target in call centers who are come from different backgrounds, right? And so those people have different ways of chunking numbers. But the average Target shopper who's an American wants to have numbers delivered to them in a certain way. And when you don't do that, you confuse the hell out of people, actually, right? So patterning is good in all aspects of the idea, basically, right? So there you go. That's today's thought. Benefits of doing just one more than you need. Test it out. Let me know how it goes for you. And when you're doing that, another thing I'd like you to try and think about is see if you can get through the day. A week would be even more amazing, and a month even better. Timing every single thing that you do, everything, right? Down to the second, if you're really wanting to learn about how your schedule does and does not work. When I worked for Aon many years ago, I was a freelancer and I had my butt in the chair and I was making good money, and I wanted to know how much time it took me to do the variety of things I was doing for Aon. I was writing all kinds of content, and I wanted to know how long it took me to do these things so that I could charge a fair amount based on what I was earning and based on what I thought I should be charging from a freelance standpoint. And it was very, very eye-opening. Basically, in a nutshell, you might work an 8-hour day, but you're really only working for about 4. You've got all these trips to the bathroom, you've got water cooler talk, you've got different sorts of tasks that take up different sorts of times, and it was very, very eye-opening. So take a whole day, record everything that you do. You get up and you go down the hall to go to the bathroom, record how long it takes you to do that. You go and you grab a snack, record how long it takes to do that. Maybe a sweet snack takes longer than a salty snack. Believe it or not, it's possible. Maybe because you have to go into the refrigerator to get something, it takes longer. But be aware of all that. And your production skills will get better and better and better and better. And I should say, to close out, that this idea, while I did a lot with it on my own, I'm pretty sure the idea came from reading a book many, many years ago, right around that time, by a guy who was the fastest mountain climber in the world. And that's what he did. So he was not the fastest, he said, because he was literally faster, moving faster, but because he knew every little inch of his process so that he could tweak it in a way that enabled him to be the fastest. It was a really cool book and a short read, and I'll find it and I'll plug it in here so you can take a look at it if you want as well. The podcast for today, Marketers Who Can't Market, but today, whoa, maybe we give you an idea that it will help you so you can market better. The last couple times I've been unsure about things, but this I'm very sure of. So live with it, do something good with it, tell me how it worked out, and tell your friends. Tell your friends to listen to the podcast, and hell, be on the show, will you? Who are you? Are you somebody that would like to be on the show? Yeah, you okay? Yeah, reach out, doc@nihonhustle.com, right? Send me an email. You can also send a message like in the comments if that's easier, and I'll see them. It'll say it's being moderated or something like that, but I'll see it. Go ahead and do that, all right? I'll see you tomorrow. Hope you had a great day. I enjoy having these little fireside chats with you. My hustlers, keep hustling out there. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy. Bye bye.